They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. We are so happy that you're here. I'm Jennifer Horn.
I'm Katie Gorka.
And we have an incredible episode today. I get so excited when I get to bring on women that I love and respect, and a real friend to at least be here in Southern California. Katie, you have not yet met former state senator Melissa Melendez. She's now the executive director of the America First Policy Institute. But when I say that conservatives in California fight harder than almost any other conservative on the planet, I mean it, because we have a lot to fight in our state. And Melissa has been doing just that for the last couple. I want to say you're only like 29. I know, Melissa, but at least the last couple of decades. And you have such an incredible story. She served in California's State Senate District number 28, and you can give her a follow on Twitter at Senator Melendez. Senator, thanks so much for being here on Happy Women with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to meet you, Katie and Jen. It's always fun to be on with you. And yeah, you're right. I've been in elected office for 14 years. I started off at the city council level and somehow ended up in the legislature. And it's an eye-opener for sure.
Well, let's start at kind of the beginning for you, because you have a really interesting story. You have an incredible family. You have family in service to this country. You have great kids. And so I think we should kind of start back at the beginning for you, how you ended up here.
That is a great question, Jen. It's a very great question. So let's see. I grew up in Ohio, was born and raised in Ohio. I was the daughter of steel mill workers, which, in that part of the country, that was a good middle-class job. And I mean, both of my grandfathers worked in a steel mill. It was just, at that time, it was a good job. So I came from a middle-class background, ended up going into the Navy and serving in intelligence as a Russian translator, / interrogator. And every male member of my family had served in the military. None of the women did. I was the first one. But for me, it was just, I don't know, it seemed common sense. You go and serve your country. The phrase is you serve something greater than yourself. So that was just kind of instilled at me from a young age. My brother, served as well. Two of our sons, my husband and I, Nico, two of our boys served. Our youngest one, about ready to graduate from high school. His plan is to serve in the Navy as well. So, we're all Navy all day, no Army allowed in this house. Except for my brother, we give him a pass, but that, I think that's what led me into serving in politics, though I would have never in a million years ever envisioned myself in elected office. But I think that sense of, wanting to stand up for people who feel like they don't have a voice, I think that's where that comes from the military service of, fighting for the people who maybe can't fight for themselves. And that's kind of how I saw it in the legislature and city council level too, is, somebody has to stand up for folks, and not everybody can serve, obviously. And that's how I ended up here. It was kind of, I was approached, never had thought about it, but was asked to run, and had a little chat with the family. And I was vetoed. They all said I should do it. I did not. And here I am.
I love your story. I just have so many questions because there are so many interesting components of your background. I want to first of all actually ask you about Youngstown. I was so interested to see that that's where you were from. It's kind of considered ground zero for the gutting of the American heartland, right? And also I have like a special sort of feeling about it because the one trip that my husband got to accompany the president on when he was campaigning, no, actually, I'm sorry, when he was president, was to Youngstown. And Sebastian was just so moved by the experience and by what he saw. But I am so curious, do you still have family there? And what's happening in Youngstown these days? Is it surviving? Is it just in serious decline? What's happening?
It is in decline. I haven't been back in quite some time. I still have some family back there. We moved out of Youngstown actually and to a more, a further suburb when I was probably in, I don't know, I want to say 5th grade, because even at that time, and I was born in 68. So, that was early 70s, but Youngstown was really declining at that point with crime and it not being safe. And one of the reasons we moved was because I had an altercation with some older boys, when I was walking home from school. As we're the latchkey kids, my generation. So, you're on your own, get yourself in the door. But there were some problems with crime. And so that's why and that was way back then. So now, it's even worse. And it is ground zero for, when you look at it, you see what used to be, because again, it was steel mill country and it was a good middle class job. You could raise a family on a single income. At a job like that, you had benefits. It was hard work, but you could raise a family on it. And that certainly has shifted, as we know, in our country, where we, move everything offshore and those jobs are gone.
And not only moving everything offshore, but I'm also, we have sucked a lot of the wealth out of the middle of the country and sucked it to the coast. And, Washington, D.C., we've grown and grown and grown our federal government so much that I think that's also pulled a lot of resources out. But if I could, I just want to ask you one other question, touching on the things that you raised, and that is the fact that you served in the Navy. I was so struck by the fact that it was announced last week that the Navy missed, really by a long shot, missed its recruiting target. I think they hit they came in at maybe 70% of what they were targeting. What's going on with that?
Oh, well, I think the Marine Corps is the only branch of service that actually hit its target. I think all of the other services fell short. I'll tell you what's happening in the military. First of all, progressives in this country have done a very good job over the years. It wasn't overnight, but over the years of convincing the next generation that this country is not worth fighting for, that we are not worthy, that we've made too many mistakes, that we should be ashamed of ourselves. And when you're feeding kids heads with that day after day while they're in class, it does start to take an effect. So now you have a whole generation which is saying, do I really want to go fight for a country that's done so poorly in its history and isn't treating people well and is so racist and all of these things that they're telling these kids. You couple that with the fact that that whole COVID nonsense where they kicked so many people out of the military, my son included, for not getting the COVID shot, whereas now they're admitting there were a host of problems with this COVID vaccination. It wasn't as effective as they claimed that it was, Dr. Fauci being, the biggest I won't say the biggest. Yes, I will. He was the biggest liar. But, we have all of these people who say, well, if that's what this means to serve, they're going to force me to put something in my body that isn't healthy for me and treat me poorly if you don't agree to. I mean, it's a combination of things where I think we have, young people now who say, is it worth it? And that's a huge problem because we have some serious geopolitical issues that we have to deal with now, and we don't have the force readiness to equipped to manage all of these different battles, on all these different fronts with these different countries.
And, I mean, look, it's the same argument really that you can make about what's happening with law enforcement that is happening with the military. And that is who's in charge. And when you see Joe Biden and what he's done and what he did in Afghanistan and how many hotspots he's opened up because of his poor leadership, you have to wonder if kids are going to really want to put themselves at risk with that at the helm. In addition to what I think you're absolutely right about, we talk about it a lot here on this podcast, is how we've been able to tell a whole generation of people now, maybe multiple generations, that America is the problem and not the solution. But just to get back to this vax, because we talked about it on the radio show I do in Los Angeles, we had audio from the Navy Secretary Del Toro, who was asked in a hearing, a congressional hearing, about whether or not he feels that he didn't stand with the members of the Navy that were told to get out, that were fired because they wouldn't take the COVID vax. And we have at Salem Radio in Los Angeles a great kid who is, I think, 24. He was in the Army. He refused to take the vaccine. Thankfully for us, we benefited because now we have this great kid working at Salem, but he wanted to go fight for this country. He wanted to stand for our freedom. freedom. He wanted to do that. And now you've got the best and brightest being told to leave because he didn't want to take the vaccine. And the same thing goes with your family. There's so many reasons, I think, that people are finding not to jump in and actually fulfill their goals of service. And that may be something that's a part of a family that's now being broken because of the current climate.
It is. And, while I think that the whole COVID vaccine thing certainly played a huge part, at least most recently, I do think the reality is over the last, 20 years or so, maybe, again, they have done a very good job of defeating patriotism among our young people. They're not teaching them to be proud of the fact that they're Americans. I mean, when you travel to another country, we're kind of a big deal. You're Americans, right? And we should feel that way. I mean, we should be very proud of the fact that we are from America, just as every other, Europeans are proud of the country that they're from and all over the globe. That's a core part of what makes us successful, is being proud of who you are, proud of what you stand for, and willing to fight for it and protect it and help continue, the success for your people and for your country. And that's the piece I think we're missing. These kids are being taught that all of these other countries, oh, look what they're doing and look how they're doing it differently than us, and we should be more like them. No. We have certainly made some very tragic mistakes throughout our country's history. Every country has. You cannot show me a country that doesn't have those same misgivings in their past. The difference for us, though, is we overcome them, we defeat them, we do better.
Yeah.
That's the difference between us and the others.
And just really quickly, just before we move on from your military service, because I think it's interesting, as a woman going into the Navy, how was that for you? I mean, did you have a different experience maybe than some of your brothers?
Yes, I did. I did. But, I grew up with a brother. So, and he was 2 years older than I. So it's not as though I didn't have any exposure to, being around males, in my household and in a working environment, I guess. And definitely at that time, it was different. I was the first woman to go into that squadron, and some people were fine about it. Others, I think they felt, oh man, we can't talk the way we used to. We can't act the way we used to because now we have to, kind of watch it. I get that. I just went into it not with a chip on my shoulder, not with this, oh, I'm a woman now and you have to, cater to my needs. I just went in and did my job. And if there was something that bothered me, I addressed it directly. I didn't, there's a time and place, I think, to go to through the chain of command and report something, when it's really becoming a problem. But somewhere along the way, women have lost this ability to just state how they feel, address it directly. It's not, I don't know if I'd call it confrontational, but I guess some would characterize it as that. But, Jen, if you say something at work that I find very offensive, then I'm just going to tell you and we'll work it out, hopefully, and that it's this communication thing. Right. But it's this communications. Like, when did we lose this ability to communicate with one another? I laugh because when you think about the advent of social media, which was, supposed to be make us all more sociable, right? And it's had the exact opposite effect because now we don't want to talk to anyone. We don't want any kind of face-to-face confrontation. Everything has to be done, through an email or a text or I don't know. It's a weird world we're living in right now. But my experience in the Navy, yes, very different, I'm sure, than even the women who served before me. And certainly different than the women who are serving now. And I know this only because, I have a husband still serving and I have a son still serving. And so I hear about the training they have to go through. I hear about the training where they have to learn about domestic terrorism within the military and craziness like that. So yeah, it's different.
So a lot of the people that we speak to are kind of everyday people that just really care about what's happening to the country, and they are trying to find ways to stop it, right? What can we as individuals do? So now I'm so curious to go back to how you got pulled into politics. What was that like for you? What made you go in the first place? And maybe if you would just share a little bit about it, because I think a lot of people feel, in fact, I think anybody sane probably feels they're not qualified to go into politics. They're not a politician. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yes, I was definitely one of those people who said, I'm not qualified to do that. I mean, I'm a mom of 5 kids. Yes, I have a college education. Yes, I had a career before those kids came along. But as far as politics, I was busy having babies. I wasn't involved in politics. So, but in my city, there were 2 vacancies on the council, and we kind of, my husband and I looked at it and said, well, there's nobody on that council that's like us, like, that's raising a young family. Everybody was older, kids were out of the house. And I thought, they want different things than we do. And so we need a voice on there. So I thought, okay. I mean, it was actually my father-in-law and my husband who were the instigators behind all this. I still haven't quite forgiven them for that. But then I was invited by Tom Del Beccaro, the former chair of the California GOP, and they were doing kind of these, town halls up and down the state. And so he came to Riverside County and he asked me to participate in this town hall. I didn't know any better. I was just, I think I was 2 years on the city council. Sure, why not? So we go to the Mission Inn. And, I go walking up and there's all these protesters out there. I thought, who are they protesting? It was us. They were protesting us. So that was a surprise. But we go in and there's a lot of union folks there and they're standing in the back with their signs and everything. And I thought, all right, well, let's go. And so it was very interesting to me to have that conversation with them. And some of them we were actually able to not necessarily change their minds, but they listened to our point of view and they were kind of contemplative when we were explaining to them, the way that we think should be as opposed to the way they are. And so it kind of went from there. And then someone came and said, we want you to run for state assembly. The person who was in that seat was terming out because they were in a 6-year term limits. And I'll be honest with you, my first response was, why would I do that? Why? What? No. Ew. No, I don't know. But I sat and had a conversation with my husband about it and a few other people. And they said, like nobody is qualified really to be in elected office. I mean, what are the qualifications? They're very basic, have a pulse, be a certain age, don't be convicted of a felony, you're good to go. So, and after you're elected, that changes a little bit because they're seeing plenty of people up in Sacramento get in trouble with the law, but not felonies. So, I just looked at it and said, okay, well, yeah, I am qualified. I'm as qualified as anybody else. And I'm scrappy. I'm a fighter. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. So yeah, I'm probably a good person to go up there and fight for all the people who are just like me. And so that's kind of how it happened. And I still am astounded to this day. I wish my parents were still alive because they would be shaking their heads saying, I don't know how you did that or why you did that.
And I think it's really important to understand in a state like California, Melissa, where we both live, Republicans are very outnumbered, and especially in the state legislature. What was the balance of power like when you were there? And right now I constantly look at Assemblyman Bill Asaley, who is currently serving in the legislature, and he's great. He can't do a lot, but he gets people on record and he tries to force their hand by getting stories out into the press to outrage people so that there's pressure actually put on these guys who love to operate under the cover of darkness. They don't like to be questioned about all their craziness. So when you were there, what was kind of your attitude being outnumbered, and what exactly was the balance of power, both when you were in the Assembly and the state Senate?
So when I first got to the Assembly, there were 27 Republicans out of 80 members. Today, there are 18.
I was going to say pretty good.
Yeah. So, and in the Senate, when I got there, we had 9 Republicans. They now have 8. Hopefully we will win one of those seats back. But that's still, clearly we're severely outnumbered. What I have seen, though, I mean, if you look at just the Assembly, that huge decrease, I have seen Republicans come in and try to be a little more Democrat-like, thinking that, well, Democrats will come along and support me if I'm voting for, some of their issues. That has not worked. As we've seen, the steady decline now from 27 members down to 18. It could be even less, this coming election year. That strategy doesn't work. That's just not how they're wired. And I think Republicans would be wise to, whatever you campaigned on, the issues you said you believed in, and the moral ground that you stand on, stick to it. Your moral compass, keep it intact, because you're not going to bring people along by flip-flopping and doing all these sort of mental gymnastics to try to justify your votes. Stick to what you know, and for goodness sake, if legislators held more town halls, they would know exactly how their constituents feel. I mean, I did town halls every month for the entire time I was in the legislature, every single month, sometimes twice a month. And I had Democrats come and I had independents come. Believe me, it wasn't just Republicans. That is the best way to know, how does your district feel about these issues? And it is remarkable. I don't know why more legislators don't do it, but they just don't. But how do you accurately represent the people whose voice you're supposed to be if you have no idea how they feel about things? So don't, it's like, what are you afraid of? You asked for their vote, so why won't you talk to them now? I think that's a key missing element.
So I'm in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is like the California of the East. We
I used to live in Alexandria.
Oh, even better. You know what it's like. Okay,
yes.
So actually, Fairfax County, we're a little bit better off than in Alexandria, I have to say. But even here, right now, we cannot break through about 35% of the vote. And there are plenty of people who listen to our show who are in the same position. What would you tell us who are in sort of predominantly blue localities? Any lessons learned? Any advice for us on how we can better help our Republican candidates to win?
Yes, they need to get out there and talk to people. I mean, you can't mail it in. I've seen more candidates. They just want to send a mailer out. They want to do a little radio, ad or something. That doesn't cut it. People need to look you in the eye and make an assessment about your character. And that could be the 2 minutes that you're at their doorstep. They make an assessment about your character in that 2 minutes. And it's very important. And I know, knocking on doors, it's not a lot of fun. It's hard work. I mean, especially in Southern California, I remember walking and kept waiting for the weather to get cooler. It never did. I was so tan by the time election day came around. So now I tell candidates, okay, when it comes to election day in November, if you're not very tan and very skinny, then I know you didn't do your job, because you need to be out there, like knocking every single day. And I get it. People have jobs and families. Okay, well, great. Then if you don't want to put in the work, then don't bother running for office. But you have to talk to people. If you want something from them, go ask for it. Don't just send them something in the mail, because, frankly, people, I don't know, probably 35 and under, they're not checking their mail anyway. So it's a waste of money. Consultants love it because, makes them some money, but that's not, you have to talk to people. So I would say in Fairfax County, you got to tell these folks, don't be afraid to go into these communities. I knocked on Democrat doors. I knocked on independent. I knocked on everybody's door, and many of them were shocked because they would say, I've never had somebody running for office of any office knock on my door ever. So that alone, I mean, I can't tell you how many Democrats said, well, I'm going to vote for you just because you showed up, because nobody else has showed up. You have to show up.
It's the connection, that personal connection. And when you were in Sacramento, Melissa, you really did a fantastic job, even with the numbers as they were. What are you most proud of as your legacy in both the Assembly and the State Senate serving California?
Boy, that's a tough one. The thing that comes to mind first would be the whistleblower bill that took me 4 years to get passed. They kept blocking it. They kept killing it. And this was the bill that said, everybody's protected in California as a whistleblower, essentially, except for legislative staffers. And I cannot tell you how many members of the legislature were doing things they should not be doing to their staff members. And staff members, like, what could they do? If they reported it, they got fired. I mean, they didn't say that's why they got fired, but, they find a way to get rid of them. And so these young women, and sometimes young men too, were stuck. And so for 4 years, I tried to get that bill through to say, like, you have to protect these folks too. You just have to. Well, then the Me Too movement took place, and it was this perfect storm. And then suddenly all eyes were on the legislature because I told them, I will introduce this bill every year until you pass it, just so you know. I'm just warning you. And I did. And finally they had to pass it. And I would say that's probably one of the ones I'm most proud of, because it was very frustrating, because everybody, well, not everybody, I mean, the people who were, doing naughty things certainly didn't agree. But the staffers, Democrat, Republican alike, were just like, come on, can we get some protection here? It's still not perfect, but it's something for them. And that one, that was a pretty good win, especially because I got to stand. I went onto the Senate floor when Kevin De Leon, now city councilman in LA, but he was in the Senate at the time. He was the Senate president. So I was standing in the back of the Senate chambers, just watching very curiously him talk about all the wonderful things about this bill, the same bill that he killed 3 years in a row.
So today you are executive director of the America First Policy Institute for California, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So tell us about that. I'm familiar with the national organization. I don't think I even realized that they had state chapters. Is California the only one? Are there others? And what do you do?
Yeah, so AFPI is headquartered in DC, but now we have a chapter in California, in Arizona, in Florida, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And the goal is to have a chapter at some point, in each of the states, because, AFPI is about, you put Americans first, you put Californians first. That's the goal. With these policies that make sense for Californians, for America, that's what we are all about. We're not, we're not a political organization. We don't support candidates. We don't donate to candidates. We're a 501c3. But the point is to educate people about, here's the way it is now. Here's what it could be. Here's how it could be so much better. Or maybe in some cases, it's here's how it used to be. And here we are today. So let's fix this with sound policies. It's not partisan, although I think a lot of people may view it that way, but it's about the policy, not about, the politics. That's a different realm. That's not our lane right now. But it's funny to me for the number of newsletters that go out and website and social media and all the news that's out there. People are very uneducated about a lot of these issues because it's so much. So what we're trying to do is establish our lanes so that people know, okay, we can trust them to tell us the truth. We can trust them to give us the accurate data, the research, the common sense approach to these things. And then they can put pressure on their legislators or city council members, school board members, you name it. Because it's our government. It's the people's government. And I think we've kind of lost that in a lot of respects. People feel like, I vote, nothing changes, they don't listen to me. And people really, I think, are hungry to take some of that control back. Some of that is manifesting itself in some of these school board recalls we're seeing, where people are fed up, and so I think they're starting to see, what, actually I can have an effect on change. It's not always easy, but I think they're starting to realize that.
It's funny when you hear America First, now people think that somehow it's political. That should be the least political thing that we all say, right? Is to put America first. I don't know. That doesn't seem, it shouldn't be like extremist to say that. In our final few moments here with you, Senator Melendez, I know that California has a lot of issues. And I think one of the great things about the America First Policy Institute is that not only do you help shape and create policies that benefit California and America by extension, but also you educate people. And sadly, I think we are in the situation we are because people only hear the first sentence of something. They only hear like the tweet or the X version of an issue. So perfect example, in California, we're suffering because of the crime problem that even though they're gaslighting us, telling us that crime is down, we all know that crime is not down. They're just not prosecuting crime as much as they used to be. And Prop 47, Prop 57, these have all been reasons for that, but they sell it to us under the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, right? So people hear safe neighborhoods and schools, great, sign me up. And now we're in a situation that's really bad where even law enforcement can't enforce laws that matter. We have rape that has become like a misdemeanor in some place. It's insane. So part of this is about, I think, education as well, so that people really have a grasp as to what's going on. What do you think is that top issue, and what is your solution, just the kind of bullet point version of that for what's happening, at least to us in California?
Yeah, well, crime is on everybody's minds, and we know that just not instinctively, but also from the polling that we've done. Crime and the economy are the number 1 and 2 issues. And it's irrespective of political party. Everybody is tired of the crime. Everybody sees the people going into their Target or their drugstore or their grocery store, just walking out with, bags of things, and the clerks know these people by name. It's absurd. And people are tired of it. And now combine that with the fact that inflation is terrible, and everybody's feeling the heat. The cost of groceries are going up, the cost of gas, everything is going up, and they're very frustrated. So they're more inclined now to say, hold on a second, we need to change how we're doing things. That's why Prop 47, a repeal of that, is going to be on the ballot in November. That's largely, for our chapter, public safety is one of the core issues that we focus on, because having served in the legislature for 10 years, I've seen all of the changes just over the last decade and how we've gone from, this is a crime to now, oh, it's no big deal. And for goodness sakes, we say now that if you reach the age of 60 and you're incarcerated, well, now you're eligible for early release.
No matter what you did.
No, yeah, it's like 60, like, okay, so you enter sainthood at the age of 60. Is that what we're talking about here? Because I'm so looking forward to turning 60. Just a few years away. This is going to be great, But it's these kinds of things. And now, they say, well, if you were convicted and you're a person of color, well, you can now claim that you were convicted because of your race and then have this retry. It's crazy. And all the victims out there, they are the people who are really starting to pay attention to this. So that's a big part of our focus, just making sure people know what is taking place and how it could be different. And then they take it from there and they go put the pressure on their either the members of Congress, their state legislators, city council, but they need to know, because right now, the media just isn't doing a great job of laying it out for them. And even when they do, people are working, 2 jobs now, raising families. They don't have the time, or just because at this point, they're kind of apathetic, saying it doesn't matter because nobody listens to me anyway. So you've got, all these forgotten men and women out here who have largely given up. And our goal is to bring them back in and say, no, you can make a difference. And here's how you can do it. And here's the information that you need to then convince your neighbors and the moms at school and the guys at work to start putting some pressure and start going to some of these meetings. Because school board meetings used to be like a snooze fest, right? Nobody went to school board meetings. And now you're seeing a whole lot of people show up at school board meetings because of what's happening in these schools. And that's going to happen at the county level, at the school board level, at the city council level, because people are starting to realize, what, I do have some control. And that's a good thing.
So for people who care about the future of California, how can they get involved with the America First Policy Institute? How can they support your work?
So, we are on Twitter, AFPI_CA is A1 policy. Jen, you can't put it up on the screen. Sorry. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. I'm personally on Instagram. We don't have an account on Instagram. Our website is americafirstpolicy.com. Please go there. You can click on the California chapter link and see all the things we've done. You can contact us through that website. We are always looking to have people help us spread this message, spread the word. I can't do it alone. We have a good team out here, but it takes the people of California to do this. But they can most certainly contact us. We're going to be hosting some events, so we welcome people to attend those as well. Jen, maybe we can get you to come out there too, and Katie, we're going to drag you out as well. But we just need people to feel, I think they just need that little bit of encouragement and sometimes just a little taste of success for them to know that they can do this. They really can. This country has done it before. We do need to bounce back from what has been done in the last, few years, but we can do it. We're a magnificent, wonderful, just the best country out there as far as I'm concerned. But we need to start getting back to basics and making sure that, people can be successful, live their lives, raise their family, and not have to make $1 million a year in order to do that.
Absolutely. And that's why we love having fighters like you. We love highlighting your story and just helping people who feel, as you mentioned, left behind. That's the purpose, I know, of the America First Policy Institute here in California. You can follow Senator Melendez at Senator Melendez on X, and we'll connect as well on social media so that you can get more information. And Senator Melendez, thank you so much for the conversation today. It is always so great to catch up with you and just from your perspective, hear what we need to do to get more involved, because it is up to each and every one of us.
It is. And just thank you, ladies, for having me. I just admire both of you tremendously. And, you do hard work trying to educate people and get the word out there. So thank you for that on behalf of all the folks watching and listening. I know they probably tell you that a lot, but I'm going to tell you too. We very much appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
We are all part of the fight. Thank you so much, Melissa. Great to see you. And thank you all for joining us. We love having you here. Please share information about the Happy Women podcast. Share it on your social media. You can connect with us as well. Leave us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. And definitely make sure that we are part of your weekly routine. We really do appreciate having you there. You can always check in with Katie at katiegorka.org. Get her book, Next Gen Marxism, as well. It's available wherever you get your favorite books. Amazon is where I get mine. I know we're not supposed to, but that's where I go. And you can follow me on social media as well at Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, at Jennifer Horn on Truth and X. And we can't wait to talk to you next time. Thanks so much for joining us. It's the Happy Women Podcast.